Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld podcast, your source for all the latest breaking Star Wars news, rumors, and discussion. And this week, we are talking about the finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi, A Star Wars Story. I keep hearing people call it a TV show. I keep calling it a limited event. Nah. This thing was a movie. This thing was cinematic. I saw it on a big screen, so I don't know what the rest of you guys were doing. This was a Star Wars movie as far as I'm concerned, and I'm looking forward to diving into everything that went on in the finale. That's all we're going to talk about. I know other stuff happened this week. There was other news. There was a Lego trailer. People said things about wanting to be in Star Wars, and there were rumors about other people potentially being in Star Wars, but that will be saved for another week when we don't have the rematch of the century to talk about, not to mention everything else that went down in Episode 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's what we're going to be focusing on here tonight on the Star Wars Underworld podcast. First, though, introductions are in order in case you're new to the show or you've forgotten who we are. That can happen. My name is Dominic Jones, and with me, as always, he's the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? It's good to be back and good to be talking about this little episode we got for us tonight. And nothing else. I mean, for the first weeks, this is probably the biggest Star Wars news week since Celebration. A lot of stuff's happening, and we're not going to talk about any of it, okay? It's all irrelevant to what we're talking about tonight, okay? We have so much to cover, and we have about 2 hours, and that isn't even going to cover it, so, we'll save all that for next week, okay? There's more important things at stake here.
I feel bad for the Bad Batch. We've been pushing that trailer discussion for, Celebration literally was a month ago at this point, right? Like this time last month, people were starting to arrive in Anaheim. We were starting to get set for the weekend. That was sort of wild to think about. But here we are now. Also with us, as always, good friend and co-host, Chris Seekell.
For those of you that are not watching, we have like a new format for our video where we're kind of shaped like the French flag, and I'm like in the middle, and I not only feel like I'm on one of those talk shows where people counterpoint are arguing. I feel like, Dom, I feel like you're like the host trying to get me and Ben to like argue about some dumb thing, but only for like 3 minutes before you cut us off. We're like, that's all the time we have. We have to go to commercial. Sorry. But I not only feel like that, but I also feel like I'm doing that inside like a Marvel movie as well, talking about like whether or not Spider-Man is a menace to society. So it's like this multiple layers of like, I feel like I'm in a thing inside a thing inside a thing. So it's really interesting just trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do just looking at the camera while you introduce Ben and his French political conspiracy theory.
We're not going to, we look like we should be discussing politics or religion or things like that. We're not going to do that. We're going to discuss something far more divisive, which is Star Wars. So we'll get
I have all this stuff prepared about the taxation of trade routes and I have all these points where I'm going to own the separatists.
I want pictures of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
We did, in Star Wars Rebels, we did get a little bit of, Imperial propaganda with the, Imperial Propaganda Network and everything that was going on there. That was kind of interesting. That's something I feel like could be explored more. Perhaps if the political temperature in the world ever goes down a little bit, it might be more palatable, but I don't know if that'll ever happen again. So
you know what? 2030 will come by and we'll be like, remember how chill things were in 2022?
There was only one insurrection that year.
Remember when there wasn't a professional wrestler as president, and when we watered our lawns with water and not Gatorade?
Boy, we really are trying to lean into the cable news format here. I feel like I have to get us back on track and get focused on Kenobi. And I think the best way to do that is with a picture of Hayden Christensen on the red carpet in Toronto, because. For everybody who's listening and not watching, we've got a couple of pictures here that I wanted to share with folks, and I'm going to sort of describe them and describe everything because I alluded to this off the top. I did not see the finale for Obi-Wan Kenobi on my TV, on my phone, on my computer, anything like that. I got to see it in the movie theater. To quote the special edition trailer, the way it was meant to be seen. And not only did we get to go to a cinema screening of it, but Hayden Christensen and Deborah Chow, director, were both there. And they were both just there for like the whole day. This was like an all-day event. It began at about 2:30 in the afternoon and went until about 9 o'clock because they screened all 6 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Before they even did that, though, that's when they had a little mini red carpet for Canadian press, so CBC, CTV, places like that. Got to do their interviews with Hayden and Deborah, and all us fans got to kind of watch from afar and hope to catch a close-up glimpse of the 2 stars, the 2 Toronto-born stars, which is why they were doing this event in Toronto. And I was lucky enough to get a quick moment with Deborah Chow, who is just delightful. Just delightful. She is super sweet, super focused, super serious, and super talented, obviously. But she came through, she sort of walked through where the fans were. We created kind of like a fan tunnel with like stanchions on either side of like a walkway. And both Hayden and Deborah came through, and Deborah went and talked to everybody. Hayden came through and was talking to everybody, and then at a certain point his handlers like grabbed him and were like, we gotta go. So I didn't get a moment with Hayden, unfortunately, but I did get a moment with Deborah. She was very, very nice, and she was very impressed that we managed to make it from 3 a.m. until 2 p.m. without watching episode 6, because I wanted to see it on the big screen. I knew some people who did go to the screening who had watched it beforehand, but I had to see it for the first time in the movie theater. And then they all load us into this movie theater. And before the movie even starts, Hayden Christensen and Deborah Chow come out on stage and just, say a little hello, a little welcome to everybody. And then they screened the episodes, and they start screening episode 1 and episode 2. Then they gave everybody like a 10-15 minute break. Then they screened episodes 3 and 4, another 10-15 minute break. Episode 5, another little break. And then after that, the finale, and then following that, we had a sweet Q&A with the 2 of them, just answering questions about what it was like to, to come back or to be a part of Star Wars for the first time in Deborah's case. And it was such a terrific experience. And really, we've talked about this before, how we miss the theater experience with Star Wars, and This really made me miss that as well, like the fact that we're not getting movies. Just seeing the episodes on the big screen, I was wondering how would they hold up, right? Like I figured they would look good, but I was thinking they might look good for TV on a movie theater screen. They looked like movies. Those things were cinematic. They were cinematic, and some stuff that we talked about on this show. Like the lightsabers, the look of the lightsabers. I think our phones and our TVs and our computer screens are not doing those justice. Because on the silver screen, on the big screen, that fight in episode 3, not even the one in the finale, the one in episode 3, the way the blue lightsaber reflects off Ewan's face and the red one off of Vader's helmet, and then when they clash and it creates this purple. It was gorgeous. That was I went from being like, oh, that's kind of interesting shot, I don't know how I feel about it, to being like, oh, that might be one of my favorite shots in all of Star Wars. That's how much the experience of seeing it on the big screen changed it. And then the finale was just incredible. And to see it with an audience, it was the perfect sort of post-credit scene to Star Wars Celebration. Because after beginning Celebration with an event that was previewing this show, where everybody was losing their mind to see Hayden and Ewan and everything, and then to go through all of Celebration and to watch those episodes while we were there, and then watch the episodes at home and get to kind of go to for an afternoon, go to a mini celebration at a movie theater in Toronto. Just felt right. Just felt like the perfect way to cap off the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, the month-long event that was. And what I'm just going to call Obi-Wan Kenobi a Star Wars story, because it feels like a movie to me. Damn it. It feels like a movie to me. And one more thing I'll show you is they gave us these sweet free T-shirts. I'll hold up for everybody watching. Kind of get out of the way of the microphone. It's the duel between Obi-Wan and
That's awesome.
and Vader. For everybody who's watching, it's kind of a black and white thing. It's really cool, really, really cool. So huge thanks to Walt Disney Studios Canada for the invite. That was surreal, very fun to go to that, and it was great fun to also share it with some great friends like Din and Matthew and Kareem. We had a terrific time, the four of us, just watching Star Wars for an entire afternoon and capping it off with the epic conclusion to the limited series event, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I know that there were other screenings elsewhere in the world that I hope everybody who got to go to those enjoyed them. I know in Australia there were some IMAX screenings, which would have been pretty sweet for episodes 5 and 6. That would have been a pretty sweet way to see it. And for everybody who didn't get to go to a screening, I hope they do more of these for Andor, for Mandalorian, for Ahsoka, and I hope that, things work out enough that they're kind of hiding how far along they are with the Taika Waititi movie, that we're able to be in cinemas together for a new Star Wars movie in a year and a half's time. We'll cross our fingers and our toes for that one. Because
So they're just gonna announce hey guys, the movie's coming out next week, just so you know.
It does feel like that might happen. I mean, we've talked about this with the timeline for the movies before. August feels like the latest possible start date. And, the movie may feel like the way that they may be presenting the movie to us as something that's early in development. That could all change in a month. Our perception of it can change a lot. I'm not saying that what's going on behind the scenes will change a lot, but our perception of it could change a lot if they decide, all right, ready, set, go. Let's make this thing. Let's go. So we'll see. I think Thor comes out in a couple weeks now. The weeks after Thor could be very interesting. If Disney decides, all right, Marvel's had their turn with Taika. He's promoted this movie. He's made us another $1 billion with it, or 800 million, or 1.2 billion dollars. Who knows? Now it's time. Now that everybody's hyped about him and what he can do, let's remind them that he's doing a Star Wars movie, and let's drop the bomb on them that, December 18th, 2023. Everybody come on back to the theaters because we'll have something sweet from Taika Waititi and Lucasfilm Limited. But who knows? But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 6. We will get to that in just a few minutes. Before we do that, though, a couple of quick reminders. As always, if you're enjoying the show, make sure you're subscribed, whether you subscribe on YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, and if you like the show, leave a review or a comment, something just to telling the world that you're enjoying what you're hearing. You can also super chat with us during the show. That's a good way to make sure we see your comments, and that helps us plan the next IHOP party or whatever that might be. Another way to help do that is to become a channel member. I'm still not entirely sure what that means, but that is something you can do, and we appreciate it when you do that. Or you can support us on Patreon. Also, I won't even say or, I'll say and or, like Cassian Andor. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/the SWU, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to our weekly pre-shows. We had a really interesting conversation this week about phone etiquette and movie theater etiquette and that sort of thing.
The philosophy of cell phones.
Yeah, it was
or
not our
or whatever you call your thing.
Yeah, your mobile. It's not our sort of usual pre-show where we review a Marvel or a Netflix property, but a very interesting discussion, I think. So if you want to hear it, chuck over $1 at patreon.com/the SWU and take a listen. That's it. That's all there are banners for. So that's all we will be plugging at this moment in time. Ben clearly thought he had more time because he vanished. So he'll be back at some point for our discussion. We're of course talking about
about me.
Yeah, you're back. Let's talk about part 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, directed by Deborah Chow, the great Deborah Chow, Toronto's own Deborah Chow. And we'll start how we always do. Go around the table, give some initial impressions. Ben, as always, gonna throw it to you first. What'd you think of part 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I've thought long and hard about this episode, and I've been thinking specifically about things I do not like about it. And I think I've come up with one thing, maybe. We'll get to it
Okay.
The rest of it, darn near perfect, if you ask me. Okay, and it's a masterpiece of an episode, if I do say so. It's just there's so much in this episode. I think going into it, I was like, there was rumors. There's always those rumors, but it's going to be an hour and a half long. And, I wasn't betting on that for sure. And I was like, there's a lot to happen in this episode. And I know they can do a lot, especially with about an hour to deal with. But, I was kind of worried, like, can they actually wrap all this up and make it make sense and make it satisfying for the rest of the series? I've had mixed feelings about this show. Overall, there's episodes that I really, really liked. There's episodes that I was kind of iffy on. So bringing it on home for me, I think, with this one was so satisfying. And having it come to this crescendo of just like firing on all cylinders, giving us this emotional impact. There is Star Wars things, movies, episodes of TV shows that make me cry every time I watch them. There's not too many that make me cry more than once. This is one of them. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's thrilling. Of course, there's a lot of great action, but it's got the emotion behind it. And it gives me like everything that I wanted, really, truly. Like it even down to like some of the thematic stuff, down to I started thinking about, wait a second. So Luke in A New Hope, he sees a lightsaber for the first time. That means if Raven shows up, he cannot see a lightsaber. That could break canon. And I guess for the most part, he doesn't see a lightsaber in this episode, and I'm happy about that. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. There's little things that I was kind of worried about. That I was like, okay, they made it work. It's just I'm over the moon about this episode. I really am.
That was something Deborah Chow talked a lot about in Toronto at the Q&A, was how much effort went into making sure that they didn't break canon. Which is ironic given the fact that there were headlines for 4 weeks about them breaking canon. But she spoke extensively about how, something they made a point to do, or one of the things they really worked on, was making sure that this fit between the two trilogies, and and they meant that both thematically and in terms of canon. And I something that I'll say about this show is that it feels both like something that is connective tissue between the two trilogies, very direct connective tissue, but also something that feeds into other tie-in material that exists and feels like it could be setting up future tie-in material somewhere down the line. Chris, over to you. Your thoughts overall on part 6?
Yeah. So Ben mentioned the runtime and the expectations of the runtime. I did not have expectations of the runtime, but I had expectations of things that would be in the episode. And so what I kept doing while watching it was I kept checking every time there was an ending how much time was left.
Me too.
Because from one perspective, it definitely had that Return of the King type, lots of endings vibe to it, but also they needed to do so many things for it to be right. And so I kept checking to make sure, please don't let it end now, because if they end now, I'm going to be disappointed. And thankfully, they did all of the things that I wanted to see in it, in order for me to not be disappointed, which is why I was satisfied. I definitely now am kind of seeing this whole thing, like you said, Dominic. It's not just this episode; it's the entire series. It's the entire series is like one movie, and I'm definitely seeing it that way. I see its flaws in the perspective of it being a movie. If it was a one long movie, it would be kind of a little bit too long of a movie, in my opinion. And that's actually what I don't like about the series. I would be interested to hear your perspective later on that, Dom, having seen it all back to back to back to back like it was a movie. But just, piecemeal, it felt to me like it was paced a little long for a movie. But that being said, it was a great movie, and the ending was great, just kind of like how Rogue One had an amazing third act. I felt like the third act in this last episode was the strongest part, which is what you want. You want your ending to be your strongest part. And they definitely succeeded at having the best stuff at the end. So it was a very satisfying episode, a really exciting episode. And truly, I will hand it to them. They did the thing that Star Wars does the best when they're playing within stories, lines, and characters we know, and that is add things that should have been in the movies that weren't. And we'll talk about that. So I feel like this was a very good continuation of the story of the prequels, and like you said, Dom, a very good connective piece between the original trilogy and the prequels. So well done on the ending. I look forward to binge watching, marathoning the series at some point to have an overarching second take on that. But initially, my reaction is just strong ending for a series that might have had a little bit too much here and there and missed opportunities within its runtime. They could have done more with the time on screen, but good ending.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me first speak to what you said about watching it back to back the way I did. It never felt long to me. It never felt repetitive to me. It felt like I wouldn't even say every episode built upon the previous one. Every scene built upon the previous one. It was a roller coaster from start to finish. From that first episode all the way through to the final scene with Qui-Gon, to the moment it fades to black. It felt like a journey that we had been on, and it felt like a satisfying, meaningful journey. So I do think that this show works as a 5 and a bit hour movie. I really do. It works as 6 individual episodes. I think it works if you watch watch it in pairs of episodes. I think it works if you watch it sort of as a trilogy of two episodes, episode 1 and 2, then 2 and then 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6. I think it works on every level, which brings me to my overall thoughts on the episode, which is perfection. Truly and honestly perfection. And this show has delivered from episode 1 all the way through episode 6 for me in every way that I wanted to, and in every way I couldn't imagine it would. It has somehow managed to not just enrich main characters from the saga, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. It has enriched and Princess Leia, and it has enriched background characters from the saga, like Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. And it created such a memorable roster of new characters with Rokin and Tala and Haja, and everyone involved in those scenes. I kind of can't believe how perfect I think this show is. I didn't think, it's that thing people say about people when you watch Star Wars when you get older, that you're always looking for something to give you the same feeling that you got when you're a kid, and that's really difficult because you're not a kid anymore. You've lived too much, you've seen too much, you've grown up, you've seen too many movies, you know all the tropes now. This gave me that feeling. I watching it all 6 episodes in the movie theater, I felt like a kid again, and it was really, really a beautiful, wonderful experience. And so I worry I'm going to be boring this episode just telling you how much I loved it, but that's how I feel. That's how I feel. And we always say on this show that we're going to be honest with you, and that means we'll tell you when we dislike something, but it means we're also going to tell you when we love something. And I got no complaints. No complaints. Even the episodes that I thought were weaker, seeing them as part of the whole feels right. It feels right. So it's I don't like to throw around the word perfect too often. I feel like it loses its power if you do. And so with that in mind, I will say I thought this episode and this series was perfect. This was everything I wanted and everything I didn't know that I needed from a Star Wars show, all in the 6 parts. So hats off to Hayden and Ewan and Deborah and Joby Harold and Hossein Amani and everybody who worked on this series, because it was everything I wanted. It really, really was. So let's talk about what was billed as the main attraction for the entire series. The rematch of the century. Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan Kenobi, round 2. We thought we saw round 2 once already, but that actually was round 3. We didn't realize it at the time. Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Vader. Chris, I'll throw it over to you first. What did you think of their showdown in this episode?
I think it's probably a good thing that this isn't the first time in the series that they faced off, because it is taking me a little bit to get used to the new style of filming these fights, because I do feel like there's a lot of qualities about it that are different than any of the films. And I don't know if that's the budget or just the different direction of Deborah Chow and different cinematography. I'm not sure. There's so many things that are different. So I think I'll have to watch it many, many times to really start breaking down what those differences are. But ultimately, it was enough for me to have to get used to. And I think by the time we rolled around to this episode, and because there was kind of a part 1 and a part 2 to the fight, by the time we got to part 2, I was kind of acclimated to the different portrayal of it, to the point that I could stop thinking about it. And I could just think about kind of what was going on with the characters. And what was going on with the characters was really fantastic. I got worried when Obi-Wan got buried. I got worried. I'm like, is this really how they're going to leave it? I'm like, that doesn't feel right. They're still missing that emotional element to it. And then they had that, and they did the Star Wars Rebels thing. And the thing about this show that is both kind of exciting, but also slightly disappointing, it's a double-edged sword, is that we got what we wanted, but we also got what we wanted. And so it's difficult for me because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, people called it. You have Hayden's face under the mask, and then all these other things as the episode concluded that people called. But at the same time, there wasn't much about it that was shocking or surprising or felt very innovative. It just felt like, okay, this is what people want to see. We're seeing it. So I was excited because obviously people wanted to see what we needed to see, what would have been the best thing to see. And we did see that. And it was very emotional to have that. And my biggest takeaway from it is it changes the way that I view the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think it also changes the way that I view Vader / Anakin, but I need more time to process that. With Obi-Wan, right away I had a realization while watching the episode for the first time, which is I've always thought of when he's talking to Luke in A New Hope about how Vader killed Anakin. I've always thought of that other line that he says about many of the truths we cling to depends greatly on point of view. And so I always thought that Obi-Wan was editorializing a lot. That Obi-Wan was editorializing a lot and giving his subjective opinion when saying to Luke that his father was dead. And I always thought that it was a bit cruel of Obi-Wan to want to pit Luke against his father. And now, having seen this episode, having seen that moment where Vader says, Anakin's gone, I killed him. And then you see the shift. You see Obi-Wan turn around. And when he did that, I had this realization of, wait, so this entire time, he wasn't trying to kill Anakin / Vader. He wasn't trying to rid the galaxy of him. He was just trying to see if his friend was okay. And when he realized his friend was gone and there was nothing he could do, he gave up. And that adds so much perspective to how he dealt with Luke and Vader and Luke and Anakin. It adds so much more information to what was going on there. It means that when he was saying those things to Luke, he truly did believe that Anakin was gone and that he was pitting Luke against Vader, a separate entity, a menace to the galaxy, completely unrelated to the past. And that's a really important perspective to have on the character. And that's the best thing that this series did for me. The best thing that this episode did for me is it changes how I view the other films. And that's really cool. So I hats off for that one. That makes everything else worth it to me. All the character development that, for me, at least, seems imperfect up to this point, the way it was portrayed. It makes it all perfect because the way that it was tied together and the main point that was made that they led up to was so important and transformative.
Ben, what do you make of how the series has impacted your view of Obi-Wan?
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to watch A New Hope or even Revenge of the Sith the same way after this. And it's totally been, as a lot of these shows have been, kind of a character study on both, especially Obi-Wan, but also Anakin. And, we talked about it last week. Where did they get that from? Where did they get that thing about Vader killing Anakin. There was this idea that came between Obi-Wan and Vader about this alternate view of this different point of view on what happened. Now we know that answer. It's answered in this episode. It comes from Vader's view. It's what Vader chooses to see and chooses to believe in regards to, I killed him. You didn't kill him. I killed Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that comes from Vader. I love that. So now you can't watch the movies, any of the movies, without really thinking about, especially those moments where, Obi-Wan's recounting that moment. And then just going further, I think everyone was a little worried about this. I was not as worried, but I was, intrigued and, hesitant about, okay, they're doing something. They're taking what George established and building upon it. And that's really what any of this stuff is doing, but like taking specifically something that George set in place of Anakin and Obi-Wan have the duel on Mustafar, and then they meet on the Death Star, and that's it. You're going to be messing with that. I think that they built a better bridge between the two movies, both emotionally and physically, with the choreography and everything. It's not as intense as Revenge of the Sith. It's toned down, but at the same time, it's more intense than A New Hope was. Pretty much anything is. But, it kind of bridges the gap and kind of tones everything down and makes it make a bit more sense when they get to that point. And then emotionally, of course, it's this kind of leaving them, both characters, in the place, taking them from Revenge of the Sith and putting them in the place they are kind of in A New Hope, where when Vader says, "You should not have come back," kind of makes sense now. Obi-Wan walked away from him, and Ben Kenobi could have stayed away, but he came back. This all kind of falls into place. I like that a lot. And just overall, visually, it's stunning. I think I've had mixed emotions. I think my overall view of the series, I think something I've kind of come to realize is that I think the cinematography just doesn't agree with me sometimes. I'm just not a huge fan of it sometimes. That's to say that I can't find redeeming qualities. By far, there are some beautiful shots. And specifically, talking about, because I had some conversation with other people and talking about Shaky Cam. And now sometimes it can be used very well. Sometimes it can be used not so well. And they actually use it very well thematically. If you watch the scene between Obi-Wan saying, "I'm sorry," which, again, kills me every time. And you have Vader looking at Vader. The shots of Vader are handheld and it's constantly shaking. It's kind of following him as he's kind of getting up. All the shots of Obi-Wan are static shots, kind of shadowing, kind of, you could say, kind of mirroring like their states of mind, that Vader is very conflicted and Obi-Wan's very steadfast of their beliefs. I like that a lot. That's really cool. So shout out to the cinematography and Deborah Chow for doing that. Even though some of the shots I didn't enjoy because I can't tell what's going on sometimes. But overall, it's a brilliant fight. And I think we've never seen Obi-Wan this powerful before. We've never seen him never seen a Jedi period outside of Rey, picking up a bunch of rocks and throwing his stuff at him.
Yeah.
We've never seen, go ahead.
I love that in The Last Jedi, Luke says the Force is not about lifting rocks. And yet whenever there is a meaningful moment for a Jedi, it always seems to involve lifting rocks. And, this is kind of, not to turn this into a Last Jedi discussion, but you could say, oh, that's a flaw in the writing, or it's a shot at Last Jedi or anything. It's really not, though, because as we talk about so often, one of the complicated aspects of Luke in that movie is that he's wrong about a lot of things.
Right.
And he's right about the Force not being about lifting rocks.
It's not a power you have.
Yeah. In the sense that your superpower isn't just lifting rocks and that's all you can do with it. It's what you can do with that power. And what you can do when you're in communication with the Force. And so lifting rocks when we see Jedi doing it, they're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, going, "Oh, isn't this cool?" It's always at a moment that is very meaningful for them. And it's at a moment where them lifting rocks is them achieving something they wouldn't be able to do if it weren't for the Force. And there's always a reason behind it. You know, for Rey, it's to save her friends. For Obi-Wan, it's to make sure that he can continue to live on and, you know, fulfill his destiny within the galaxy of training Luke Skywalker one day. And it's at a moment where it's at that moment where he does that he understands that's his place now. I think he thought he understood it before, but he truly understands it now. That moment in the pit, which you alluded to earlier, Chris, like that moment is the series. Like that whole moment, the whole series can be boiled down into that moment of Vader using the Force to try and crush Obi-Wan. Because that's where Obi-Wan is at the beginning of the series. He's crushed by his guilt and his failures, what he perceives as his failures with Anakin. And so in that moment, we're seeing, you know, visual storytelling of Vader literally trying to crush Obi-Wan. But what gets him out of it is what's gotten him out of it over the course of this series, which is his time with Leia and seeing Luke from afar and recognizing in the two of them the good in Anakin and the good in Padme. You know, these two, his two best friends, arguably. He sees them in their children. And that's what gives him the strength to go on. That's what allows him to break out of his funk, to climb out of this pit that Vader has put him in, and that his feelings about Vader have put him in, and allows him to move forward in the galaxy. And that moment is the series right there. The whole series can be boiled down into that scene, and that is it. Yeah. That's Obi-Wan's journey in one scene. It's fantastic. It's perfection. That's why I love it. That's why I love it. The conversation that the two of them have, that Obi-Wan and Vader have, it's fascinating. You know, Anakin's gone. I am what remains, Vader says. And Obi-Wan apologizes to him. He says, I'm sorry, Anakin, for all of it. And this line is very, very interesting to me. I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. The same way I will destroy you. I think this is Anakin Skywalker's last gift to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because for all of the past 10 years, Obi-Wan believed that he created Darth Vader. That's what has driven him into the depression, the funk that we see him in at the beginning of the series. He's believed that for his entire life. And so what does he say when he sees Anakin through the helmet? He says, I'm sorry. He apologizes. It's almost like he's hoping that apology will save Anakin, will rescue him, will let him get out of the suit, or at the very least turn away from the darkness and back towards the light. But Vader doesn't do that, obviously. It doesn't happen for many more years until Return of the Jedi. But he lets Obi-Wan off the hook. He says, you know, I'm not your failure. And, you know, we talk about Anakin's downfall, and we talk about all of the external factors. We talk about the way Palpatine manipulated him, the way he didn't feel trusted by Obi-Wan, the way he didn't feel respected by the Jedi Council, and all of those things absolutely contributed to Anakin's downfall. But at the end of the day, Anakin's downfall was his choice. He chose to go to the dark side. He chose to side with Palpatine. And that's what he's telling Obi-Wan in this moment. I chose to make this. You didn't make me make these decisions. You didn't force me to make these decisions. I made these decisions myself. And because of that, Obi-Wan is able to move past his guilt. He's able to realize that while he made mistakes, and while he perhaps bears some blame, there's nothing intrinsically about him that created Darth Vader. And he can now move forward and train Luke and train this next generation's hero. You know, whether he intended to or not, Vader in that moment lifts a great weight off Obi-Wan's shoulders. And I one of the things I love to do in Return of the Jedi is watch all of Vader's scenes with Luke and wonder who's talking to Luke. Is it Vader or is it Anakin? And I kind of wonder the same thing in this moment. Is that Obi-Wan's friend breaking through ever so slightly to let him off the hook? Is this an accidental final gift that Anakin gives Obi-Wan, or is it one that he does that's intentional?
The way that I read it, and I'm also thinking like you, I'm trying to figure out now who was talking to Luke and how that continuity works. But going back to this particular moment, I kind of viewed it as Vader feeling patronized, that Obi-Wan would view that.
Interesting. Yeah,
made Vader.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah,
He wants to be like, I made me. It's not. I'm not someone else's mistake. I made this decision myself. Yeah. I made me, and so that's the way that I read.
There's a great little moment in Attack of the Clones during the Battle of Geonosis, but Anakin makes a good call. He tells the clone trooper to fire at the gas tanks or the fuel tanks or whatever, and Obi-Wan says to him, Good call, my young Padawan. And Hayden gives him this look of like, way to take credit for my accomplishment, you giant SOB.
Right.
Like he gives him this look, and it's like, yeah, he resents. I think he resents Obi-Wan. He says as much in the prequels, and I think he feels that, people say Anakin and Obi-Wan, they really just mean Anakin. They really just mean Anakin. He's the great warrior. He's the one who is out there saving the galaxy. And I think he thinks Obi-Wan's just kind of along for the ride. And this would be an extension of that. And saying, he doesn't... This is him feeling like Obi-Wan, like you said, is patronizing him again, as he did all through his upbringing. He probably felt like Obi-Wan was kind of looking down at him. And so in this moment, he takes that back. I like that. He takes that back of, no, I'm not your mistake. I made me. This is who I want to be. It reminds me of in the finale of Breaking Bad, when Walter is talking to his wife and he says, I just need you to know why I did it. And Skylar says to him, I swear if you say you did it for your family one more time, see, that's been his justification through the whole show. And Walt says, no, I did it for me. I did it because I liked it. He admits to being the monster in that scene. And I think right there is Anakin doing the same thing. That's his sort of, that's, I am the danger. I am the monster. That's his moment there. Obi-Wan didn't create me. I made me. I like it.
I think both your readings worked. I think you can look at it for either or, and it's not I've got, kind of DID on the mind, after Moon Knight, of like different personalities inhibiting the same body, and like who's talking things, who's the person that's actually talking at this moment. And I think Vader, I never thought of it this way, that Vader is kind of like that in a way, but he is the same person. I think a lot of people kind of like try to separate them out a little too much, maybe. Ultimately, they are the same person. It's just kind of Vader's way of looking at it. But I like the idea of there's a small shred of Anakin that's maybe trying to provide comfort to Obi-Wan. But I think it's spoken through the mouth and through the lens of, and it's doubly like poignant and on point and thematic and everything like that when you're hearing his voice, both Hayden Christensen's and James Earl Jones' voices saying the same line at the same time. Like, it really can't be more on the nose that both Anakin and Vader are talking at the same time.
Good point.
So I think you can read it both ways and hear two different voices and say that, look, this is something that kind of Anakin and Vader are kind of merging and kind of coming, like whatever's coming out of that mouth is kind of a meshing of the two and trying to give two different messages. I like that a lot. And I think, yeah, that totally Vader would kind of try to take credit for that. He wouldn't want Obi-Wan to feel bad, but he wouldn't want him to feel bad because, oh, you created me. No. Vader is his own guy. He's his whole life he's wanted to get out from under the umbrella, the shadow of Obi-Wan and be his own man. Of course, he's not going to want Obi-Wan to feel that. And going to try to take that away from Obi-Wan. But from Anakin's perspective, it works oppositely. It works as this almost comfort. So Ben Kenobi can go off into the sunset and be at peace. Give him what he needed all along, which is serenity. The serenity that we see at the end of this episode, and also what we see in A New Hope, when he's not shocked, he's not stressed out. When he walks in that hallway in A New Hope, he's like, okay, yeah, Darth again. You're not Anakin. I'm not even going to acknowledge you as Anakin. You're Darth Vader. I'm going to call you as much, and I don't have any emotion towards you, because you're a different person, and I accept that.
Yeah, I think, I think you guys have nailed it on, hit the nail right on the head here. I think it is still a gift that Vader Anakin gives Obi-Wan, but it's sort of an accidental one. He lets him off the hook through his own sort of, selfish need and drive for power, and his attempt to diminish Obi-Wan, as with so many of the dark side choices, the choices that people on the dark side make, winds up creating the situation of their downfall. Had Obi-Wan never left Tatooine and had he just continued watching Luke from afar, I don't think Owen would ever let him near him. And even if he did, would the Obi-Wan we saw in episode 1 of this series been able to effectively train Luke Skywalker? Hell no. He needed this awakening. And he gets it on this journey. He seeks out Vader to get some form of closure, and he thinks maybe that'll take the form of one of them dying. But it all informs his choices later. The fact that he's able to walk away from that, he realizes that that it allows him to be ready to train Luke. He says to Owen at the end of the episode, "The future will take care of itself." He can't force the training the way he was trying to force it at the beginning. He has to let things take their own course. And so, it's Vader in that moment frees Obi-Wan to one day train the person who will be his downfall, or maybe not even who will be his downfall, who will save him. And that's, there's something kind of poetic about that. As someone said something about Star Wars once, it's like poetry, it rhymes, something like that.
Yeah, sure. So now moving forward to Vader's future, now it's interesting to look at the context of his conversations with Luke. And the thing that strikes me about this is, if it's true that Anakin and Vader are completely separate people, then Luke would be Anakin's son, not Vader's son. And yet, whenever Vader's talking to Luke, he's calling him son. I am your father. I mean, it just right there, is that moment where Vader chooses to do that, and then of course comes the question of is that Anakin speaking there or not, and I really don't think it is. I think that at that moment Anakin is still very much dead, but I think Vader does see Luke as his son. He just sees it in a twisted way where he wants him to be his apprentice, and he wants to use him as a pawn in that eternal Sith struggle. Yeah. And so to overcome the master. And so I think that it's whatever caused Vader to see Luke as his son, even if it was selfishness at first, like I can use this to manipulate this person because I have this connection with him that I don't have with anyone else. I think that's the chink in the armor right there. I think that's the one vulnerability that Vader had that allowed Anakin to come back out again, that attachment. And it's interesting because attachment's what got Vader in. Vader was able to overcome Anakin through Anakin's attachment problems. And it was those same attachment problems that ultimately allowed Anakin to come back in and take control over Vader. And it's very interesting how that problem becomes the solution in that way. And it comes full circle. It's, again, that rhyming poetry right there.
Yeah, whoever said that guy was really wise. Knew a thing or two about Star Wars. That George Lucas fella. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this last week. I brought up the scene in the comic book where Vader learns the name Skywalker. He learns that that's the name of the rebel who destroyed the Death Star. And yeah, I think you're right. I think from that moment onward, Vader is obsessed with finding Skywalker, finding Luke, and he's not really sure why. He just knows that this is a connection to his past, and he suspects that. And I think the story he tells himself is that, well, he could be powerful. Anakin was powerful. I am powerful. My son could be powerful, and he can help me, in the struggle against the Emperor in that eternal game you're talking about. But it wouldn't. I think maybe on a subconscious level, Vader might be thinking, this is Padme's son.
Yeah.
I need to meet Padme's son. I need to see what he's like. And I don't think Anakin ever really believes he can be saved until he makes the choice to throw the Emperor down the pit and save Luke. I don't think he ever believes he can be saved. But I think that idea, that thought of Padme's son is out there, eats away at him, and it opens him up to the idea. And meeting Luke, I think, opens him up to the idea that maybe there is an alternate future out there. Maybe there is a future where I don't have to live as this pathetic creature who is the Emperor's lapdog. And I don't think that ever establishes itself as a conscious thought for him. It's all on a subconscious level. But when Luke is pleading for his help, it breaks through, and it's been there, and it's been lingering long enough. And when Luke tells Vader in Return of the Jedi, when they're talking on Endor before they go to the Death Star, come with me, turn back to the light. I can't remember his exact line, but Vader's exact line is, "It's too late for me, son." Mm-hmm. And that is one of the most heartbreaking lines in all of Star Wars, because I think Vader knows what he's doing is wrong. Yeah. He's lived with it enough. He's confronted it enough, but he doesn't see any other way out for him. He doesn't see another future for himself, even as Luke is trying to offer him one. And that's the Vader we see in this show. That's the Vader. I think Obi-Wan in that moment, if Anakin had said to Obi-Wan, "Help me," Would Obi-Wan not have done everything in his power to help Anakin in that moment? That moment where he's just apologized to Anakin. He's seen his face. He's crying. He's saying, I'm sorry for everything. Would he not have done everything he could to help Anakin find some sort of peace? But Anakin in that moment can't imagine that that's possible or that he's worthy of it. And so he says to Obi-Wan, Anakin Skywalker is no more. I am what remains. And then, this is part of the reason why I was thinking maybe there was a little bit of Anakin shining through there when he says, I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. Because there is probably still a small, hidden, buried part of Anakin that does care for Obi-Wan, that does want Obi-Wan to have peace. And maybe it came through there. Or maybe he was just trying to stick it to him. Or maybe it's both. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe his primary thing, maybe in that moment he's thinking he's going to say it, but he puts say it to let Obi-Wan off the hook, but he puts a little stank on it because he has to, for his own sake, for his own sanity, he has to be like, no, I am evil. Even though it's not your fault. he has to put his own spin on it. But that moment, that's one of the great that's one of the great moments in Star Wars now for me. That's up there in the pantheon. That exchange between the two of them, and Obi-Wan choosing to walk away and focus on the good that remains of Anakin, not necessarily within Anakin's soul, although we know that some does exist there, but on the good that came from him, which is Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia. And you see that in that final moment that Obi-Wan has with Leia, where he tells her about her parents,
Another crying moment.
Yeah. You are wise, discerning, kind-hearted. These are qualities that came from your mother, but you're also passionate and fearless, forthright, and these are gifts from your father. Both were exceptional people who bore an exceptional daughter. Like that's Obi-Wan's future now. It's Leia, it's Luke. It's preserving the good of Anakin and Padme through their children, and allowing them to flourish. He gives Leia the holster, even though he doesn't give her the blaster yet. But he gives her the holster because he knows that that's what she'll need someday. And Bail and Bria both acknowledge that as well. They both know that is ultimately what Leia will need down the road for her to achieve her full potential one day. And Obi-Wan does the same for Luke years later when he gives him his father's lightsaber.
Well, it sounds cliche to say it at this point, but the core Star Wars is hope. The core of Star Wars is about characters, if you want to break it down in like the most uncomplex way possible, of characters either having hope or not having hope. Vader is without hope. He is without any positive thoughts. He's all negative. He's all, this is horrible. I hate myself. I hate Obi-Wan. I'm a victim, or whatever else he's thinking in his horrible mind. And then Obi-Wan at the beginning of this series is without hope. He is without a way forward. He is just focused on, well, Yoda told me to do this. Well, Yoda told me I got to watch over this kid, so that's what I got to do. But things are horrible, and I'm depressed, and I hate myself, and whatever else. And and then you go to apply to other movies like The Last Jedi. Luke starts the movie without hope. Guess what? He gets hope again, and he restores it to the entire galaxy. At the end of this, Obi-Wan chooses to let go of his hopelessness in favor of instilling his hope in the children, both children, not just Luke, but both Leia and Luke, that he's sworn to protect.
Well, there's that great moment in Last Jedi where Holdo and Poe are quoting Leia. You know, hope is like the sun. If you only believe in it when you can see it, you'll never make it through the night. And that's what the dark side does to you. That's what it does to Anakin. It's what it does to Maul. It's what it does to Ben Solo. All of them, all of these dark side apprentices, even masters, are without hope at all times.
You think Palpatine has a lot of hope? I don't think so.
Well, that's Palpatine's great ability is he makes people feel like there is no hope.
He's a vacuum for hope.
Yeah, exactly. So if hope is like the sun, if you only believe in it when you can see it, you'll never make it through the night. There's something else I wanted to say, but it's flown out of my head. So hopefully make our way back to whatever point that was. That was really good. I swear it was a fabulous point that you all would have had your minds blown by. But alas, we'll never know. But we could even apply the same thing to Reva or to Reva in this episode. You know, she feels, or through the series, she feels hopeless, and only at the end does Obi-Wan provide her with a little bit of hope that something else could that things could go better for her.
And I do just Reva. I'll just say this right now. I love what they did with Reva. I think, I expected her to die. I expected her to. I expected kind of we're gonna have two big lightsaber duels. It's gonna be Vader, and then Obi-Wan's gonna show up just in time. He's gonna pull his lightsaber down right over Luke's face, and it's gonna ding, and they're gonna duke it out on Tatooine, and it's gonna be great. No, it's not that. It wasn't that at all, and it's better this way because it shows growth for Reva. Because Reva, even though she was out to kill Darth Vader, she's not a good person. She was not a good person. She was not doing any of that for altruistic reasons. She did some really bad things because she just wanted to make the person who ruined her life hurt. Like that's it. She wanted to get revenge on Vader. She wanted to kill him, and do whatever's necessary to do it. And her having a moment of having all the chance in the world to do what she came there for and choosing not to, again, mirrors Vader, mirrors a lot of things in Star Wars in regards to personal choice. You are solely responsible for what you do. There can be explanations, there could be people that help you along the way, but ultimately you're responsible for you. And Reva, in the end, took responsibility and made the right choice. And we don't know where she goes after this. That's great. I love the fact that it's just totally open-ended, and we don't know it. She knows the truth, the least about Luke, and there you go.
I'm sure 3 years from now, Charles Soule will be writing an ongoing comic book series about where Reva shows up afterwards. But Ben, you make the point. It's the choices that define the characters. That's what defines it. And it does bring to mind the words of Albus Dumbledore when he says, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities."
I think what was really amazing about that was what it showed about Obi-Wan's character to let her go, knowing what she knew. I mean, think about it. This Obi-Wan will do anything to protect Luke. He's just hanging out on this planet in this desert, chopping up that raw meat just to protect Luke. And he's so passionate about it that Bale has to personally fly to the dust sphere to convince him to leave his post. So showing building up how important protecting Luke is to Obi-Wan, and then to show that to depict him trusting Reva after she's just come back from serving the Empire for so many years. That really shows the faith that Obi-Wan has in people and the intuition and how much he trusts his intuition to feel like, okay, this character, is going to be fine. Her heart is changed here. And to have the intuition to know that and to trust her and have that faith in her is absolutely amazing. And to be willing to give her another chance, just like he's given Jedi the advice to walk away. He gives her that advice too as a former Jedi. Yeah, that was a really amazing moment. And like you guys said, I was not expecting that at all to happen.
Yeah. I thought, when she got the saber through the stomach last week, I thought that was it. And when the Grand Inquisitor made his return, I thought that's it. And then there's the little bit at the end where she finds the comlink, and you're like, okay, where are we going here? It still feels like this is a character who's doomed. She felt doomed from the start. And it's interesting. You make the comparison with Benny Safdie's character, the Jedi in the first episode who shows up. It's almost I feel like Obi-Wan gives two very different pieces of advice. To Benny Safdie, he's saying, hide who you are. Pretend your past doesn't exist. Pretend everything we fought for and believed in doesn't exist. And just dig a hole in the sand and hide in there and try to survive best you can. With Reva, he gives her hope. He gives her this opportunity to go forward. And in a sense, it's what Luke ultimately believes that Anakin will be capable of doing. And whether or not Obi-Wan believes Anakin is capable of that, he believes that people are. In general, people are capable of doing that. That it's possible. And I feel like that personality, that trait, that characteristic of Obi-Wan, whether he ever vocalizes it into a lesson for Luke or not, I feel like that is passed to Luke through his way of being. And so even when Obi-Wan is if not saying outright, certainly implying that the only thing Luke can do is kill Vader, is to kill his father. I think in part Obi-Wan's influence on Luke is to believe that there is hope, that there is good in people, that there is hope. And it's a lesson from Luke's mother as well. Her last words to Obi-Wan are, there is good in him. And so I maybe it's a stretch to say that Luke picked up that, subconscious belief in the redeemability of people from Obi-Wan because of this. Maybe that's a stretch. I will admit that's a possibility. But it's also not outside the realm of, Star Wars storytelling and Star Wars, lesson teaching,
Well, people's actions speak a lot louder than their words.
Yeah.
And very often people will say one thing, but really believe and do another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps this is, this is unquestionably actually a case of Obi-Wan's actions not lining up with his words. Because you look at how he tries to save Anakin after he found out Anakin was still alive. He went after him to try to save him. And then again with Reva, giving her that option, just trusting that there is good in her and that good will win out. His actions very, very different than his words. And that speaks louder. And I think Luke definitely, we don't know how much experience Luke has had with Obi-Wan. Clearly he has a certain amount of experiences that are off camera still, but it was enough clearly to pick up on that morality that Obi-Wan has, and that character trait that he has, regardless of whatever Obi-Wan says should be done.
Mm-hmm. And, in Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan implies that Luke has to kill Vader. He doesn't actually say it. Because Luke says to him, I can't do it, Ben. I can't kill my own father. And Ben says to him, well, then the Emperor has already won.
Mm.
And I think in that moment, a fair reading, especially post this series, a fair reading on that scene is Obi-Wan not telling Luke to kill Vader, but encouraging Luke to go and confront Vader, to go and face Vader, that he can't run away from his problems.
I see.
Because that's what Obi-Wan does, right? At the end of Revenge of the Sith, and that's where we see him at the beginning of this series, is he's run from his problems. Yes, he's nominally there to protect Luke, but what's he really doing? How much is he really doing there? And he says Obi-Wan in Return of the Jedi tells Luke, you must confront Darth Vader again. And I think that's him speaking from experience, that to get over the hump, to achieve what you need to achieve, to be a Jedi, to be the best possible Jedi, you have to face your greatest fear, or the dark version of you, which is what he does in this show. And when he gets the piece that he needs from confronting Vader, or he gets the answers that he needs that allow him to achieve peace, what happens? What's the final scene of the show? Qui-Gon shows up. He finally has what he needs to be ready for whatever Qui-Gon has in store for him next. And Qui-Gon says as much to him when he says, I was always here, Obi-Wan. You just were not ready to see. And I think because Obi-Wan had lived those 10 years believing that he was personally responsible for Darth Vader and should be punished for his transgressions. It wasn't until he got his answer from Vader, Anakin, whether an act of kindness or an act of malice, of, you didn't create me, Obi-Wan, I created me. Only once he had that answer and was able to move past at least some of his guilt over what happened with Anakin, was he ready to see Qui-Gon and ready for what comes next, which is, the true sort of spiritual Jedi journey that he's going to go on over the next nine years or so that he can be ready for the Death Star when the time comes.
Yeah.
Speaking of Qui-Gon, it happened. Liam Neeson is an effing liar. and I love him for it.
It's just amazing how we got to the end of the episode. I'm like, there's only one more thing to do. There's only one more thing they could possibly do. Come on. And I'm just the whole series, expecting to hear his voice.
Mm-hmm.
I am not at all like, there's no way they're going to have a Force Ghost. No way they're going to do that. I'm like, that's just too much trouble. That's just too much trouble to get Liam Neeson in the studio and put him a wig on him again. Come on, they're not going to do that. And then to actually go all the way, just phenomenal. Just it was the icing on the cake, really, truly. Because they set it up. I would have been like, because again, I was like, they don't you dare tease this and not give it to us. I want to be not happy, and then they give it to us.
Yeah, it was a pretty great moment. It got a lot of cheers in the theater.
Sure.
There were a lot of cheer moments. There was that. There was Obi-Wan lifting the rocks. And as has since been memed with the video of the people watching something in the bar and then going nuts when it happens. When he said hello there to Luke.
Yeah.
The theater, the crowd went wild, very much like they do in that video meme.
That's funny. I can't believe it took 17 years for us to get this thing. This should have been in Revenge of the Sith.
It should have been. It should
But
have.
if it happened 17 years ago, they wouldn't have put it in the show because it wouldn't have been a meme yet.
Well, so it's fascinating because it should have been in Revenge of the Sith. It should have. But this is kind of better.
Well, okay, this is like that thing that I do when I'm thirsty and I wait another 5 minutes to drink something because I feel like it's going to taste better. Delayed gratification. This is what you're.
But it's we got a whole story about it.
Yeah, that's true.
We got a whole extra story about it. Like, you could perhaps make the case that Qui-Gon should still be in Episode 3 talking to Yoda, because we know from Clone Wars that he's already connected with Yoda, and perhaps having Yoda see Qui-Gon and then open up this series and find out Obi-Wan can't see Qui-Gon might make it even worse for Obi-Wan. But to have part of Obi-Wan's journey be being ready to speak to Qui-Gon, being ready for what comes next, I feel like it adds it adds a little something extra to it. I will always agree that it should have been in Revenge of the Sith. The Qui-Gon should have been in Revenge of the Sith. I just that movie at the time was the final chapter in the Star Wars saga. It should have been in there. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
But I can't argue with this. I can't argue with this either. This was really good. It felt earned, and it felt worthwhile, that moment. And I loved how playful Qui-Gon was with his "took you long enough" line.
Right. I mean, if depending on which version of Revenge of the Sith you're watching or reading, Qui-Gon is in that movie. Sure. I have the comic adaptation, and there's a scene with Yoda and Qui-Gon talking, and it's not, you can't see him, but he's in there. And then I kind of like the progression of he didn't get there right away. He didn't get to being a Force ghost right away. He's in Clone Wars, but he can only he could only talk to people. It can only be in really, really Force strong places like Dagobah or Mortis. I like that whole thing. But this all goes back to there really is no mistakes in Star Wars. Either something is not right now, or someone will come along in the future, maybe 17 years later, and fix it. Yeah. So I'm sorry, just leave George alone about these things. They're still fixing those darn plot holes from the prequels, okay?
Yeah.
So chill out.
Yeah. Someday someone will make a 6-part event series about why Chewbacca doesn't hug Princess Leia in The Force Awakens.
Oh my God. Leia and Chewie will hug in Episode 10 somehow, and then the audience will applaud. All the Gen Zs will be happy.
They'll go nuts. They'll go nuts for it. Absolutely. We've talked about Reva a little bit already, but I wanted to bring this up because this occurred to me while watching the episode a second time. Sadly, not in the theater. But this has less to do with what's actually in the episode and more to do with the production around this movie / series. And that is when she is sneaking around through the rocks in the desert in particular, but also through the Lars homestead. I got a real Darth Maul vibe.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter.
And I can't help but wonder if what we're seeing here is a revamped idea from an earlier version of this story.
That makes sense.
Which would have featured Darth Maul. Because remember, there was the report that said Darth Maul was originally slated to appear in the show. It was, there were then conflicting reports about whether that was true or not. My theory has long been that the Kenobi movie that was being written by Hossein Amani and was going to be directed by dude whose name I can't think of right now, Stephen Daldry. I think Maul would have featured in that story, and I feel like Maul stalking Luke on Tatooine would have featured in that story.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice that Hossein Amani got a writing credit on this episode.
Yeah,
and I wonder if that has to do with the fact that a key moment in his script for the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie would have been Darth Maul arriving at the Lars homestead at night, having a little showdown with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and stalking Luke out into the Dune Sea.
I mean, that brings up the really interesting question of, was Maul originally supposed to live and not be killed by Obi-Wan?
And how does that play out? And it's a really interesting idea of removing Obi-Wan from the equation, having that happen. But does Maul have a change of heart? That's not really the Maul that we got to know through, Clone Wars and Rebels and what have you. But maybe that would have been part of his arc, and thing that, maybe Maul would have had this crisis of conscience, and maybe would have found out, as he did in Rebels, that hey, the son of the chosen one is here, and all this kind of stuff, or what he thinks is the chosen one, and that playing out like that, and you could see it kind of happening, and even more so when they're telling Luke like, oh, the Tusken Raiders are attacking, they're coming out, and you're like, and you got to be thinking like, Luke's like, it's just a woman, like that's not a Tusken Raider, but like he could probably buy that Maul is a Tusken because he just looks, he's a crazy looking dude.
I think this is a total like tinfoil hat theory sort of situation we're in here. Like, there's no hard evidence of any of this. But maybe there was sort of a version of redemption for Maul that was out there. Maybe that's what they were looking at. And there was a time when I wouldn't have been shocked if they overwrote Star Wars Rebels as part of the canon. As a Rebels fan, I'm much happier with having Sabine be a main character in the Ahsoka show, and the Grand Inquisitor and the Fifth Brother be recurring characters on this show. Like, I'm much happier.
And in
with
retrospect,
that version of it, but...
and in retrospect, like having Maul is not an animated character. He didn't come from the animated shows, but he was in a sense resurrected in the animated shows, giving that little nugget of that piece of Star Wars history, let it play out in an animated show, seems kind of fair. And the fact that it kind of leveled the playing field, and like, okay, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show did something different. It didn't go to the obvious thing of, okay, what if Maul shows up on Tatooine and Obi-Wan has to protect Luke? We've seen that before in comics and whatever else. It opened the door to some interesting new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Going all the way back to the first episode, one of my big takeaways was Uncle freaking Owen. And it feels appropriate that one of my takeaways from the finale is Aunt freaking Beru.
I'm telling you. It's funny how, again, I was preparing to be mad. I was preparing my manifesto. I was going to be very angry on this very podcast. If Lucasfilm had set this up, they had gone, okay, we got Bonnie Peace back. We got Aunt Beru back. She's going to be a part of the main cast. And I'm getting to this last episode like, come on, guys. You seriously did not set us up for this. And you're going to give us like 2 seconds of blurry Aunt Beru in the distance of the first episode. That's all you're going to give us? Holy crap. No, they delivered. They delivered. And this is the best Aunt Beru. We've been waiting 45 years for this version of Aunt Beru, this badass gun wielding, you're not going to take my kid, I'm going to freaking, do all this kind of stuff, fortify my house. Like, this is peak Aunt Beru, and I love it.
Yeah. I saw where somebody said, now when you see that Owen and Beru get, burned alive by the stormtroopers, it wasn't like just a masochistic thing where they're just like burn them alive for the fun of it. It was they went down swinging, and the only way they were going down was being burned alive by some Imperial stormtroopers.
That was
Don't you mean Boba Fett, Dominic?
No, it's not Boba Fett.
The flamethrowers were a last resort. They took out like 1,000 stormtroopers, because the stormtroopers ain't worth a damn anyway. So like Dan Baru and Uncle Owen, they were no match.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I love just sort of the little bits of insight that we get into their relationship. I think Aunt Beru likes old Ben a little bit better than Uncle Owen does. I love when Owen says Ben's gone. She kind of hits back at him with, "Whose fault is that?" I thought that was a great moment, and I love that she was the one who was like, "We're enough. We're gonna fight this on our own. We're gonna take them down. But this is our fight together. The implication being this is our child, and we can protect him best."
The fact that she had thought it through, the fact that she wasn't just like, oh, hope nothing happened. She's not this. She was kind of the brains behind the operation of like, if something happens, we're set up. I got guns. We're doing this. We can't depend on anybody else. Hopefully Ben will be around, but if he's not, we got to do this ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked in the first episode about. We saw Luke and Uncle Owen's relationship at its rockiest moment in A New Hope. And based on that and that alone, we extrapolated or a lot of us extrapolated that they had a really tumultuous relationship, and maybe, there wasn't a lot of love in Luke's home. But seeing the way Owen protected his family in episode 1 really showed that, for whatever issues the two of them had later on, Owen loved Luke and Luke did grow up loved. And I love that was, said in this episode when Reva says to him, "You really love the boy like he's your own." And Owen says, "He is my own." Just another beautiful moment. This episode is just it's chock full of beautiful moments, of heartbreaking ones, and moments that bring a tear to your eye for all sorts of different reasons.
And I love that out of all the stuff we've got so far, the most underserved characters and perhaps the most important characters were the step parents of Luke and Leia. And they finally got their due in this series. Because we got more Bail Organa than we've ever had. We've got a few cameos here and there, but like we never got this much of him. And then giving the limelight to Beru and Owen, just great.
And so Bria Organa as well, who gets a lot of love.
Never even got a line in the movies,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love in this episode when we get back to Alderaan and Leia's getting dressed, and it's, sort of her combat boots and her holster and those gloves that she made Obi-Wan buy to go along with her like Alderaan dress and hairstyle. And I love that when Bria comes in, she's like, you think she's going to be mad, but she's like, I love it. And Simone Kessel, another just tremendous addition to this cast, who just, she played such warmth where, again, you knew even when Leia was driving her literally up the wall, she loves this girl. She loves her daughter like nothing else. And yeah, Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, Bail Organa, Bria Organa. How lucky were Luke and Leia that even though they couldn't be raised by Anakin and Padme, they got pretty great parents anyway. Speaking of Leia, what do you think of the way of Leia's role in this sort of finale? The way they brought her story to an end with Obi-Wan there on the platform on Alderaan. Anyone can take this if you want it.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned it before, like the big moment where he mentions her parents, and that was really touching. I agree with what you said about that. So again, it's like the whole thing it reminds me. It's interesting how this is kind of like a take two on the ending of Revenge of the Sith, where you had that going back and forth between Tatooine and Alderaan, like you did at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So it's like, revisited 10 years later, but actually 17 years later. Like, it's really interesting. So I thought that was great. Really excited for them to come back in 6 years and Millie Bobby Brown to pick up the role. They're totally setting that up.
6 years down the line, Millie Bobby Brown will be playing Leia post Return of the Jedi. Like, that's where we'll be 6 years down the line.
Yeah, they gotta get
6 years down the line. Vivian Lyra Blair might be ready for some A New Hope scenes. Like,
yeah, that's why that rumor's confusing, and I don't understand. The timing of it. It would have made sense earlier, like 5 years ago. That would have made sense.
But it's okay. Is the rumor actually that Millie Bobby Brown is to play Leia, or just that she's going to be in Star Wars? I thought it was just that
she's going to be in Star Wars.
Yeah,
the Leia thing, I think, is something people are adding on because there were previous rumors about that a long time ago.
Yeah. So I think.
So I say that tendency.
Yeah, I think any A New Hope stuff that they want to do with Leia for the next 10, 15 years is, maybe even 20 years, is Vivian Lyra Brown's if she wants, or if Vivian Lyra Blair's if she wants it. Anything post Return of the Jedi, well, this is a different conversation that'll be had.
Post Return of the Jedi, it's going to be Alden Ehrenreich and Millie Bobby Brown and Sebastian Stan.
Let's go! I'm in.
Well, see, now that Millie Bobby Brown is like grown up, she's like 20 something now, I think.
That's about right. No, she's 18.
Oh, she's 18. Okay, yeah, she is.
Yeah.
So, but like people are like, oh, what if she was like Padme, like young Padme? Like that's where they're going now. Of like, and I'm like, okay, I can see that.
But sorry, but we met Padme when she was 14. So like,
yeah,
I think Millie should be in Star Wars, but she should play a new
age. Alden Ehrenreich's about the age that Harrison Ford was in 1976 when he was filming A New Hope.
I think Millie Bobby Brown should be in Star Wars, but she should play a new character. I think.
Yeah, this novel idea of playing a new character, someone we've never seen before.
Be in Taika Waititi's Star Wars, or be in The Acolyte, and not be related to anything else.
Exactly. What? So okay, we're talking about Leia on the platform.
They're setting up more Leia. They're setting up more Leia. I took that way off the train tracks, but they're setting up more Leia, because even if we don't get a season 2 of Kenobi, which I don't need at this point, jumping ahead, it would be nice.
We'll come back to season 2.
We'll come back to that whole thing.
Yeah.
But regardless of the whole Kenobi extension, I think they kind of have to have more Leia in the future, because we didn't get to see as much from Luke yet, but Leia, that was at one point it seemed like the Leia show for a little bit. So I feel like that's more likely than anything else to come out of this is more of that.
Yeah. Well, as it turned out, the theorists were not correct. They didn't kill off Luke or Leia. Oh, God. So we're gonna get more of those characters in the future, I guess.
I'm stunned. Yeah. Joel dropping a super chat here says, I love how this series, the sequels, and other things have really elevated Leia and made her very much made her the other that Yoda spoke about in Empire.
Yeah.
Totally.
For as much as it's done that, it also makes it so weird that Obi-Wan is just like, that boy is our last hope in Empire Strikes Back.
Wow.
That is a line that is solely for the audience, and it has not aged well.
Are we sure that wasn't just a setup so that Yoda could say his thing? And I know they were talking about another person that wasn't Leia.
It is, and but like that's a line that is in there for the audience. Like that's not something that it's not a it's not a meaningful line for either character really.
Hey,
the one moment.
Has anybody watched The Empire Strikes Back recently? They might have just cut it out. They might have just done a special edition, just cut it out of the movie.
Oh, they're gonna cut out so many lines. They're gonna cut out the line about now I am the master line. That's gone. The Leia said, "You once served my father in the Clone Wars." That's gone. Anything that can be that seems slightly incongruous, I think. Bye bye.
I love the ending. I love the ending of this episode where because again, I was a little worried about like, okay, Obi-Wan and Leia have become very close. How do you go from that to General Kenobi? Years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars. Like, I get that. I love that Obi-Wan's like, look, we have to be careful. We really can't speak or talk to one another. We have to be careful with this for both of our safety's sake. That makes sense now. It makes sense. Like, she's going to send a message across the galaxy to him that anybody can read. She's not going to go, "Oh, hi, Obi-Wan. We used to be friends." Like, nah, she's going to be very.
Yeah, I thought that too. So I feel like that moment kind of fixed that one. I'm still not sold on the Vader Obi-Wan dialogue. So that one's a little bit odder.
I do love that the Vader Obi-Wan dialogue ends with him calling him Darth. That was a real nice touch.
I missed that. That's great.
Yeah,
I missed that one.
Yeah, because we went over those. We've gone over those lines a whole bunch. But the last thing Obi-Wan says to him is, "Then my friend is truly dead. Goodbye, Darth."
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Obi-Wan,
that's amazing.
Yep.
I do think it's funny though that this is not the first time I feel like this has happened with Vader, Anakin, with the lines being incongruous, because there's the whole "my powers have doubled since the last time."
This is sort of what makes Star Wars unique as a franchise, and and I hope they don't ever try and go back and change the old things to try and make them fit together, because what makes it unique is that it's told out of order.
Yeah.
And so what's true when the story is being told can be made untrue by a future story. And I wouldn't want to miss out. I wouldn't want to miss out on this show because the dialogue doesn't line up perfectly with A New Hope. And I'll quote fanboys here. You got to keep the flaws. That's what makes it so good. And I like that. I like that about this series, and it's been that way since 1983. When a young Jedi named Darth.
You have to retcon everything.
When a young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned evil, helped the Emperor hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights from a certain point of view.
That's you have to put it all in the perspective of like, this stuff's never going to be perfect. It's never going to fall right directly into place. All you can do is just kind of make new stories and be careful with them. And I think personally, Obi-Wan solves more problems than it creates overall.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other characters in this. Really, I wanted to just quickly highlight Rokin again, because I think that's been another great addition to the show. I think O'Shea Jackson. Go ahead.
With him, what they should have done with the random pilot. They developed the character.
Yeah. But they've developed him. They've
kill him.
Yes,
and I'm glad about that.
Yes, they developed him, and now he's on the table to be used in the
that's
future.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's
I
what they
see. I want to see General Rokin show up in something.
I want to see. I want to see a movie that features General Rokin and General Reichian on an adventure together.
Those names are so similar.
But I thought he was a great addition. I loved Obi-Wan's line to him. about there's not many leaders left. People follow you. Don't stop. I think we should start the petition now for Rokin in season 2 of Andor. I think that's gotta happen, or something else somewhere down the line.
Or he's in season 1 and they just know what they're doing.
It's possible too. It's very possible too.
I mean, at this point, like I wouldn't even rule out a Kenobi cameo, honestly. Like, and I'm saying I have no problem with that.
I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it. I don't know what.
I'm not going in expecting it.
Yeah.
And I caution everyone not to expect anything even remotely close to that. But just saying, stranger things have happened. So.
Now they can't get rid of Ewan McGregor. He's like, if there's Star Wars got happening, I need to be in it, now.
Yeah, exactly.
I would prefer them to just use Ewan McGregor fully than doing a season 2. Just like leave it at this. And just like wherever there's an opportunity to use Ewan McGregor in some form or fashion, whether it's, a cameo in this area, or a cameo in Ahsoka, or just an unusually young looking Force ghost of Ben Kenobi sometime in the future.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like how they put James Arnold Taylor into Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah.
It's kind of, but I know he's gonna be in all the Star Wars, but as another character, kind of like Tone Daniels.
Yes, I like that. I like that too. Just give him all sorts of cameos all through Star Wars. The other perhaps surprise appearance in this episode, or not so big a surprise if you heard Ian McDiarmid talking at on the convention circuit lately, is the Emperor's appearance. What did you guys think of that scene between Vader and his master at the end of the series?
That was great. I thought that was really cool, and I kind of had this weird moment of, oh, wow, it's so cool seeing the Emperor again. Wait, there was that movie, and that was that whole movie. I forgot about that. It felt like the first time again just because of the era, because he's talking with Vader.
Yeah, somehow Palpatine returned again.
I just love, I think it's great to bring, like, Vader was never going to stop. Like Vader, like there was no ending here that didn't end with Obi-Wan dead, that Vader would like go, okay, I'm satisfied and I'm gonna stop this crusade against Kenobi.
Dead or in constant suffering, being tortured.
Yeah,
it's possible too. I think that would have made Vader very.
Because he had ample opportunity to kill him.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think there's evidence to show in this show that like he was I think he let him go in during their first encounter just to torture him. But having Palpatine come in and going like, okay, dude, chill out. Come on. There's more important things than your little, your revenge crusade against Kenobi. Don't go all Darth Maul on me now. Like, come on. There's, you're not Vader. And just the juxtaposition.
Obi-Wan!
Like, he does it at the end of this episode. Obi-Wan! He does. He has his.
I'm like,
moment.
that was funny. I'm like, it should be Obi, but they're not doing that because that's already a thing.
It's already somebody else. It's another
Right.
Darth's
Yeah.
It would have been like Maul just crawling out of a pit going, that's my line.
And then you also have Ben as well.
Yeah.
So you've used everything. We just needed Obi from Satine and we're getting.
But I mean, it's just great to see Ian McDiarmid again. I love that he was teasing it just a couple months ago, just like, hey, maybe he'll show up again. I'm like, oh, probably Andor. Nah. He's back and makes sense, and he's got that makeup is on point. He looks very OT in there. He's getting it.
I mean, I missed the monkey eyes or whatever the heck, but it's good.
It's good, yeah. I hadn't even, for some reason, I hadn't even really thought of him being in Andor, but it just would be perfect. The Imperial Senate's in there. He's got to be in Andor. It's got to be.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I think it would be perfect. Also, now that we've gotten him in Kenobi, I'm like, maybe he won't show up. Maybe maybe he's because there's this whole idea behind like maybe he's not in control of the Senate and there's kind of Masameda doing that. And then he's just kind of in the background, like you know, he's doing the whole like hologram of his younger self in Rebels because no one's seen him in a long time. That he's just been kind of hanging out in the shadows, down in the basement or something like that, and doing Sith alchemy or whatever.
Yeah, doing whatever he does. What really struck me about that scene is how, you know, we've talked a lot about how Obi-Wan is able to walk away from this moment or from this episode basically sort of free of Anakin haunting him or Vader haunting him. And we see in this scene that that's something that Vader will never be free of. Even after this, his goal, Obi-Wan's over it. Obi-Wan's done with seeking out Anakin, but Vader still wants him. Vader still is gonna send every probe out that he can to try and find his old master again. Great stuff. Great stuff. And I really liked Ian's performance. I've found since Revenge of the Sith that anytime McDiarmid does the voice, he does it in a far too over the top way, kind of a cartoonish way. And I feel like they wrote and designed him in Rise to play to that.
Especially when you have meaty lines like "Nothing will stop the return of the Sith."
Yeah, stuff like that. Whereas in this, you know, it was the Emperor as he was originally seen in the original trilogy, and I feel like Ian leaned a little bit more into his prequel performance, and that we heard more.
Yeah, I agree.
Senator Chancellor Palpatine shining through, with just some elements of the the Emperor voice, you know. Oh, I'm afraid the Death Star would be quite operational. Like, you know, there's elements of that, but it feels like it's more him just being Palpatine as he was.
And in
context, 1 to 3.
It makes sense with like Rise of Skywalker is him like cutting loose of like I am all the Sith, and doing all that stuff. Where he's still in kindly old Emperor Palpatine mode. He's still trying to be that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Season 2. What do we think? It seems like the powers that be are open to it at the very least, if not telling us that it's happening. How do we feel about it?
I just want to see more flashbacks. That's all I care, because that's where all the new stuff would come from. Like, I feel like this story is kind of told in this present timeline. But more flashbacks would be very welcome.
Yeah, I think it's just an anthology series of just like them, like Hayden and Ewan playing Anakin and Obi-Wan in different time periods would be great. I'm just overall conflicted with the idea because, like, I think it's almost like, even though, like, I'm not 100% happy with this show, I would have done a few things differently. I'm still like, okay, it's done. Last episode was perfect. Like, it was a good ending. You wrapped it all up in a nice bow. You know, why screw with that? You know, leave it as it is. But another way, I'm thinking like, well, maybe they can improve on some stuff. Maybe they could do some things that, you know, I thought about, or, you know, some stuff that other people thought about that they could improve on this. Unselfishly, I'm thinking of people that didn't enjoy this series. I think I know quite a few people that are like not really into this show for various reasons.
So what you're saying is, Ben, you know some people who are wrong.
I'm not going to call any names.
I kid. I'm joking. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm just teasing.
I know. But, you know, like, I am thinking of like, hey, if you didn't get what you want from this series, let's face it, when you think of Obi-Wan in this era, you think of the last scene of this show. You think of Obi-Wan, his kind of jovial hello there self, and he's riding a space camel, and he's talking to Qui-Gon, and he's protecting Luke, and he's all happy and whatever else. He's a Jedi again. That's what you think of. That's not what the show was. It was a lot of other stuff to get to that point. I think that's the whole point of the show. But I think anyone that's like, I'm not feeling this whole thing with Leia and all this kind of stuff, it wasn't really what I was jiving with. Having a show that's like, and I wanted more Qui-Gon. I think that would have been great to see more of their thing. If it is something more along the lines of, I don't know, what the Yoda arc in Clone Wars, where it's kind of Obi-Wan in deep training, trying to learn the pathway to immortality, as they say. That would be really interesting. But again, you're never going to please everyone, unfortunately. So, and we've got this, and, you kind of, if you didn't like it, you just kind of have to learn to live with it. Unfortunately, I think, like I said earlier, I think it's this is best served with like doing new things. And then when the time comes, do more with Ewan, do more with Hayden. Reva's out there. Rokin's out there. All these great characters are still there. Vader's out there. There's so much that can be done with not just like, oh, here's Obi-Wan Kenobi 2. You can do different things.
The other thing, too, is where the heck is Force Ghost Anakin? Like, come on.
I think he's in the Ahsoka show.
There we go.
In the Ahsoka show, and from what I understand, in Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. So.
One of the most shocking omissions from the sequels.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Hayden will be back in Ahsoka. That's been rumored, although they don't want to confirm it. But I suspect that'll be something that'll be very exciting when the time comes. I went into the finale thinking I would want more. I would want Obi-Wan Kenobi 2. And it's a similar feeling I had going into The Force Awakens, which was, it's so nice to have Harrison back. It just sucks he's going to die in this one. And I felt like it's so nice to have Ewan back. It's just too bad that it's only for this. And then we got to the end of the show, and it just felt whole. It felt complete. It felt like the story had been told. And so I don't think there is a sequel to this show. There may be another story out there with Obi-Wan that could be told, but I'm as perfect as I think the show is, and it sort of surprises me, I kind of want to leave it as its own thing. As its own thing. That said, if they announce next week Obi-Wan Kenobi season 2 coming, April 2024, yeah, of course I'll be there. Of course I'll be there. But it's, I feel like it told the story it set out to tell, and it told it beautifully, and it almost doesn't need more. So, as with everything, I'm open to the idea, and we'll judge it on its merits when the time comes. But for now, if this is the end, I'm good with it. I'm more than good with it. I'm happy with it. I'm ecstatic with it. So good. So happy. Anything else either of you guys want to bring up before we hit final thoughts and scores out of 10 and all that?
Go ahead.
The score is really good.
Yes.
It's a good marriage of the new themes with the old themes, and the non-John Williams stuff with the John Williams stuff.
Yeah, the choral music when Obi-Wan and Vader face off.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, when you get to the end, and I'm like, oh, where's the original themes? Where's the Imperial March? And then you start.
They got the Imperial March in there.
Okay, I get it.
They got the Force theme. They had Leia's theme. There was a lot of different ones that showed up in the last 10 to 15 minutes.
The Force theme, which was originally conceived as Obi-Wan's theme. So it feels appropriate to have it at the end there.
Yeah.
And I do really quick just want to share some breaking news I just learned, guys. They have confirmed season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's on Disney Plus right now. It's called Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope.
But Rogue One comes first.
Yeah, there's a
One
prelude to it.
Rogue.
Yeah. Well, I love how this set up that as well. Like the final scenes with Bale felt like it was,
That's true.
It
Now-
works perfectly.
Now
with,
we have
with that
such
scene.
such a Game of Thrones esque watch order through the Dark Times series of movies. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know how to do it now. But now it's like you've got with live action. It's like, okay, as you do like Revenge of the Sith, and then you do this, and then you do Solo, and then Rogue One, and then A New Hope, and then there's your 5, your pentology, your Quintinian, Quinlan Vossian. Where's Quinlan Voss? Why didn't Quinlan Voss show up? You know what? If season 2 of Kenobi is just Obi-Wan hanging out with Quinlan Voss, then I'm fine. They can do that.
But what we know from Clone Wars that Obi-Wan doesn't really like hanging out with Quinlan Voss, especially when they're literally hanging from the ledge.
That's why it would be so good. The tension.
Yeah, it would be cool. Quinlan's going to show up eventually in something somewhere along the line. I feel like Quinlan would be a better fit for Andor.
If they made Dark Disciple into a movie, I'd be super stoked. That would be a great movie.
That would
be pretty cool. All right. Actually, there's one other thing I want to quickly mention, which is the use of familiar lines again. This is something that they did a lot early on in the Clone Wars. And I remember it had a feeling of like it was a little bit like, get it. It seems like the Star Wars line. They did that. And they scaled back on it as that show went on. And sometimes, it does feel like people get into the, hey, cool. We're saying the thing. Get it.
Oh, look, Anakin said most impressive. You say that you had to get it?
Yeah. And, there were 3 that I caught in this episode. 3 lines that were repeats of previous lines. When Obi-Wan says, I will do what I must. When Leia says, will I ever see you again? And then when Obi-Wan says, hello there. And all of them work. They don't, they feel appropriate. Yeah. They feel like they're thematically calling back to previous moments, especially those first 2. And they don't feel like they're just, winking at the camera going, hey, isn't this cool? Breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Hello there veers into that territory.
They had to
a little bit.
That. They had to.
But they had to. And it was done well. It wasn't like
before. And it's done before. It's not like that. See, that one's different. If you're just chopping one line, then it's you're doing the fan servicey, gratuitous, self-aggrandizing thing as a writer. But if it's already a thing, like I have a bad feeling about this, then it's okay.
Yeah,
because he says it because they already did the fan servicey thing in the prequels. So now it's a third time. Yeah, so it's a pattern, and it's fine.
It had to be done. It had to be done, and it was done well. It was done effectively. He wasn't going around the entire series saying hello there to everybody. They saved it for the end. They saved it for his first line to Luke. It felt like really good fan service. And, 9 times out of 10, fan service is pretty good.
There's also a kind of almost a quote, Palpatine quoting himself in the end. I think he says something along the lines of, "Are you sure your thoughts are clear on this?" And it's similar to I think what he says in Return
and then there's the reversal. It's over, Obi-Wan.
I thought for a second Vader was going to say, "I have the high ground" in the fight. I thought for a second
great, but also that would have been everybody would have rolled their eyes.
That would have been like 6 steps too far.
Yeah,
like that
much.
Like
it's too specific.
It I think everybody thought it. I think a lot of people thought it. And so it works. It still works, like thematically, the idea that Vader would seek out this position. But you don't have to say the line. You don't have to lean into the meme. If this were a Marvel movie, he absolutely would have said it.
Oh, yeah.
And when we sometimes talk about the Marvelification of Star Wars, that's what I don't want them to do. There's a lot of good that can be borrowed from Marvel, but they lean a little too hard into their quips and their jokes and their self-references. And I feel like this episode was well restrained and did it tastefully and appropriately and in a way that works for the audience. Like when Leia says, "Will I ever see you again?" It's just as heartbreaking as when Anakin says it to Shmi. Like the two, both Vivian and Jake just delivered that little kid, like heart-ripping sadness so well.
So unfortunately, Deborah Chow had to finish part of that scene late, and it's going to be added to Disney Plus tonight. So after Obi-Wan walks away, Vader, he picks up the piece of his mask that had come off, and he looks at it and he says, "That's the galaxy's mask."
God.
But
I thought you were going to tell about the scene that they shot in Toronto last night after the finale screening with Hayden at a local shawarma place just having a bite that's going to be added to Disney Plus next week, or the post credit scene. Just Darth Vader after his duel, just chowing down. All right, this is taking a stupid turn. It's time for final.
All I want to say is, for a fact that there is a scene that they shot the scene, and there is dialogue recorded by both Hayden Christensen and James Earl Jones of him saying, "I have the high ground." It exists. It's in the Lucasfilm archives. We'll probably never see it, but it exists.
It'll be brought out someday on like a remix of some new Star Wars song that they'll be like, "This is what the kids like," and they'll throw it in there. Okay, this is taking a dumb turn. Let's hit final thoughts and scores out of 10 for part 6. Ben, over to you. Final thoughts, score out of 10 and you're also welcome to give your score out of 10 for the entire series if you want.
You really think I put that much thought into this? Come on.
You told us you were planning out a manifesto earlier about something that you were afraid wouldn't happen, but did.
That was scrapped, and depending on how to score if certain things were to happen. But
I spend all my time on things that don't matter, like getting mad about things that don't happen. That's my thing. But overall, this episode was amazing. I say perfect. I mean, really, truly. I think, it's a masterpiece of an episode. One of, if not the best Star Wars television episode ever that we've gotten so far. And there's a lot of episodes of Star Wars TV that I would put in, my top 5 or top 10. And this one's up near the top, if not at the top. And it's just, it gave me, I think that's what, even though I was struggling with a few episodes towards the middle of this series, I think the fact that the last 2 episodes really kind of made me happy. I guess that's one way to make me happy when I'm making a TV series. Just make sure those last 2 episodes are good. Okay. I'll forget about the rest of the stuff that I didn't like. But bring it on home in the end. And this one did. These last 2 episodes really gave me what I wanted from the show from the get-go. And especially this episode, it gave me all the feels. It gave me the excitement. It gave me a great lightsaber duel that, we were anticipating for a long time. I think it lived up to the hype and also filled in some gaps that I think even I didn't know needed to be filled in regards to kind of the character development in the story. And I feel like this is a chapter of Star Wars history we're seeing right now that, that I didn't expect. I watched Revenge of the Sith, watched A New Hope. It's never really meshed all that well, if we're being honest. But I never sat back and go like, well, whatever, it needs a TV series to fill in the gaps. I just accepted it. I'm glad this show exists for everything that I loved and everything that I didn't like. I think it really served its purpose as both a continuation of fan servicing, prequel fans, which have not been serviced in the past, giving us some really amazing stuff to chew on for many years to come. And really just a beautiful episode overall. And the series overall. Okay. Here's how I'm going to do this. Okay, so 10 out of 10 for the episode. I mean, how could I not? And I'll give the series overall an 8 out of 10. How about that?
8 out of 10 for the whole series. 10 out of 10 for the finale. Seems fair, Ben. Seems fair. Chris, over to you. Final thoughts. Scores out of 10.
It's so weird that my feelings are so similar to Ben's. It's odd. But yes. Yeah, I mean, again, this episode was great. I was very entertained. I didn't want it to end. That's always when you know it's good, when you don't want it to end, and you keep checking to make sure that there's more time left, and do like little simple calculations like, the credits can't be longer than 4 minutes, so there has to be 7 more minutes of this episode, so they have enough time for 2 more scenes. Okay, they can do the 2 things I need them to do. So that shows a lot right there, that I was doing that while watching it. I think my reaction to the series as a whole is kind of, when Revenge of the Sith came out, I hated it. I hated the movie. It wasn't until like recently that I've really actually thought of it as a good movie. Like, I'm talking like the last maybe 5 or 6 years. In the Disney era, I've learned to kind of appreciate it more, strangely. But I think this series, I have to watch it through. I have to marathon it. I have to become acquainted with it and used to it, and not just be processing all the new information. Once I've done that, I think I will probably like it more than I do right now. But initial impressions, this was, in my opinion, the series, despite the absolutely phenomenal, amazing ending, was not written in a way that was conducive to the way that it was released, unfortunately, which is very common with Star Wars. I feel the Book of Boba Fett had a lot of that. Star Wars Rebels certainly had a crap ton of that. And I feel like this series, again, it was a disservice, the points at which the episodes stopped and we had to wait a week. Like, I just don't think that it was the best way to present it. And that's kind of unfortunate. But I get why they do what they do, because it's a business and yada, yada. But so the final episode, 10 out of 10, and that means that it expanded upon the films. And so I love it. It was great, and it redeems the whole series. It makes the whole series good. But I agree with Ben. This was not a perfect series. There were problems. And so I don't want to be identical to Ben, so I'll say 8.5 out of 10.
He's trying to copy me.
Yeah, I'll give that. Yeah, I was thinking about an 8, but I'm like, no, that seems a little too harsh, because again, I love the first episode and the last episode so much. So it was the middle that was a little shaky for me. So 8.5 out of 10, just shy of the quality standard of your typical amazing Star Wars movie. Just a little things off to be quite there. If this was a Star Wars movie, it would not rank in my top several Star Wars movies at all. So that's why it's got to get an 8.5. But 10 out of 10 for the finale. That ranks up there with the best of third acts in Star Wars films. Up there with Revenge of the Sith's ending and Rogue One's ending, and amazing.
I will agree with both of you completely about the finale and give it a 10 out of 10. Absolutely. If I could give it more, I would. And I can't, because it's a totally made up ranking system that we have that doesn't really mean anything. The points don't matter. Very much in the spirit of whose line is it anyway. So I'll give it a 17 out of 10. We'll go with that. I'll give it that. Really, really loved it. But I will say the series as a whole is also perfect. in my book. This is my favorite Star Wars show. I no doubt about it. I love every second of it, and watching it all back to back in the lead up to the finale really cemented it as such. It flows beautifully from episode to episode. The way they build on each other it makes it so that the journey is never dull. It's every scene you're learning something new about the characters, whether they're saying it out loud or you're just picking it up from the visual cues. We talked so much about hope and how hope is a theme in Star Wars and how it's a theme through this series. But I can't think of any moment where anybody ever says that word. Certainly not in the finale. Yeah. Can't think of it in the rest of the series either. But it was there. You could feel it through the visuals, through the other dialogue. It was a lot of things were left unsaid, but you could still feel their impact throughout the series. Like I said off the top, the way this show expanded on established main characters like Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Leia, built on key background characters or secondary or tertiary characters like Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, or even the Grand Inquisitor and Bail Organa, was phenomenal. And the way it also introduced a whole slate of wonderful new characters like Reva and Rokin and Tala and Haja, who we barely talked about in this episode, but was absolutely fantastic. Kumail Nanjiani just nailing the right tone for Star Wars humor. I thought he was so good. It did everything I could have asked of it and more. I tried not to have a checklist, but we all kind of did, of things that we wanted to see, and it ticked every box. And then it ticked a whole bunch of boxes that I never imagined I could need ticked. So I think this show was everything I wanted it to be, and then more. So it's a 10 out of 10 as a whole as well. It delivers. If it were a Star Wars movie, if it were Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Star Wars story, it may well be in my top 5, or it may well be in my top 3 even. That's how much I loved it. It was visually gorgeous. The dialogue was heartbreaking and powerful and funny when it needed to be. The performances were excellent. Everything about it was fantastic. And I couldn't close it out without giving the final shout out to Hayden Christensen for one hell of a performance all through this series, but especially in the last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I'll steal a quote from our friend Din. Every headline in the world should be screaming about how good this guy is and how he got such a bad rap from the prequels, one he did not deserve. And you can feel it in these last 2 episodes in particular, just how much talent this guy has and how much he delivers in this episode, in these episodes. So 10 out of 10 on the series as a whole, no doubt about it for me. This is my favorite. And Andor, good luck. You're up next. These are interesting. These are some massive shoes you have to follow, or some massive steps you have to follow. But I believe Andor could be just as good as well. So I look forward to seeing that when we get there. But got a couple of scores from the chat. Matthew Hardy says 9.5 out of 10 for episode 4. I think he means episode 6. 8.3 overall for the series. Very specific. Very, very specific. Yanni gives the last episode a 9 out of 10 because he wasn't here. I'm not sure what that means. The episode... last episode last week. I thought he was talking about the last episode.
So I thought he meant he wasn't there when they filmed the show.
Yeah.
I was so confused.
I mean,
too,
the number of people that I recognized on Jabim, I'm like, it wouldn't shock me if Yanni were there.
How have we not talked about that yet? Oh my god!
Yeah.
You told us, Yanni.
So last episode 9 out of 10. This episode 9.8. Series 9.5. Favorite of the live action series so far, and I think the best of them. I agree. Jesse Bennett gives the series as a whole an 8 out of 10. reevaluating his finale rating because he doesn't have one just yet. Francisco, less of a fan of the series, 5.5 overall, but gives the finale an 8. So not
No, there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah, people look. Everyone's
There's a lot of diverging opinions on this.
I want to know what people wanted to see, though. Like, what did people want to see? The people that hated the show. I'm like, what did you want? Because I confused.
Yeah,
execution questionable, but they tried to give us what we wanted.
Execution perfection.
Execute order perfection.
Yes, execute order 10 out of 10. Rick gives it a 9 out of 10. So there we go for finale and series ratings. What fun! That's it. We're not gonna try and cover any news. We touched on the Stranger Things rumor that's out there. The Millie Bobby Brown being cast in something Star Wars. So that's something. I guess we did.
It shows up on StarWars.com. Or
yeah.
else.
And of course, there is the trailer for Lego Star Wars Summer Vacation, which looks pretty fun. That's out there as well. There's a couple other interesting news stories that will be got into next week.
Really excited that they're bringing Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens into Star Wars. Is that?
I want to see one of the characters sing "Bet on It" in this. But I think with that, we can wrap things up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed our discussion of the Kenobi finale and our discussion of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series as a whole, over the last 6 weeks. I kind of can't, or not even 6 weeks, 5 weeks. Really, I mean, we did. There were 6 episodes of this of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I think we only did 4 podcasts about it because we crammed the first 3 episodes into the first one because of Celebration and everything.
Yeah.
So really felt like a blink and it's over kind of situation with this. But I mean, what a perfect way to combat the post-Celebration blues to have 4 or 5 weeks of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And like I said off the top, I was fortunate enough to get to do a little mini extra celebration post-credit scene after the fact at the screening, which you can see more pictures of on my Instagram account at DominicJ25. That's right, I'm plugging myself first this week. I don't plug myself enough, I think.
How dare you?
Ben is hurt. But no, that will do it for this episode. Ben, thank you as always for hosting. You want to plug something? You got something you want to shout out?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, why not? Add Ben Hart with no ES if anyone actually wants to follow me there. This was it was great. As always, this was a fantastic episode for a fantastic episode to talk about a fantastic episode. And I'm gonna miss this. It's kind of fun showing up here every week, having our agenda set. Like, we're just gonna talk about this one thing for 2 hours. We don't have time for anything else. I'm gonna actually have to, work and actually do some research next week to actually bring you guys some interesting information. Hopefully, Lucasfilm, you can start the floodgates. You can open the floodgates and get some actual news now. You're not just holding this back. And actually, news tends to come out like right after. Like, they drop some stuff like, right after Book of Boba Fett, wasn't it? I think they dropped the first trailer for this show. So maybe we'll get something for Andor or Bad Batch. Maybe. Just saying. Maybe this weekend. I don't know.
I mean, I think because we had Celebration a month ago, both of those trailers were dropped then. I think it'll be a little quiet until the last week of July, first week of August, when the Andor promotion will start kicking into high gear.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever happened to like a TV spot every 2 days for everything?
I miss those days. I had such fun with that. I loved watching I know it drove other people insane, but I watched every single TV spot for The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi. I loved them so much.
Those were the days.
Them's were the days. Of course, you can follow Ben on social media at Ben Hart with no E. Yes, you do want to follow him because he posts good and funny stuff, although he has a tendency to steal jokes. Stole my joke one time.
Oh, did
It's been your pinned tweet for over a year. I was looking at your profile, and your pinned tweet, Ben, is a joke that I made on this show, and
did I steal that from you?
Yes. Ben's like, I thought I came up with that myself.
No, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty self-aware when I steal stuff from other people. I just don't credit them. I just what's the point of stealing it if you're gonna?
Yeah. Ben does a lot of like shout outs and crediting stuff, but every now and again you're like, I'm gonna steal a joke from one of my friends and not credit them.
Also, the fact is that 5 minutes after this podcast is over, I will forget everything that was said on it. So if I have a thought, if like something comes back, I'm like, oh yeah, I had an original thought. It totally wasn't something somebody else said on the podcast.
Yeah. I made this joke on an episode of Radio Razor Crest. And
I demand proof. I demand video, audio.
The recording has been available for a year and a half. No, seriously, follow at Ben Hart with no E. Very, very enjoyable follow on the social media. Chris, thank you as always for hosting.
Yes.
Thumbs up.
I forget what I'm supposed to do because I don't do. I'm on TikTok.
Plug something. TikTok.
I'm on TikTok. I made a Star Wars Underworld inside joke on TikTok. Everybody follow me on TikTok. I'll know if you don't.
Because
I know how many followers I have right now.
Yeah, you don't get a list of who follows you. You just get a list of all the people in the world who don't follow you.
I know who's watching right now because I see all y'all in the chat, and then I can see I only have 20 followers on TikTok, so it's very easy for me to figure out who's
cross-reference.
Yeah.
Well, what's your TikTok handle if you want people to follow it, or is that part of the game that they have to find it themselves?
It's my handle at Seek3PO. It's what it is for everything else.
Okay. All right. Follow Chris at Seek3PO on TikTok and elsewhere for, I guess, inside jokes. Inside jokes. That's what you get there. So go and follow that. And like I said, you can follow me at Dominic J25. And you can follow the Star Wars Underworld at the SWU. We'll go through all this stuff again. Make sure you're subscribed. You can subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that fun stuff. Become a channel member. That helps us plan for future events. And of course, patreon.com/theswu for various tiers, merchandise, pre-shows, and more. Send your listener feedback to swunderworld@gmail.com. We've got a pile that's been building up over several months now, so we'll probably dive into that in a week or two. And yeah, I think that's it. That's what we got. That's what I see amongst the banners. Unless we got a spoiler alert we want to give. I don't know. I can't think of anything. That's it. So we'll see everybody next time. Well, I won't. These two will. I'll be off next week. So I'll see everybody in 2 weeks' time. But for Chris, for Ben, for all the other wonderful people at the Star Wars Underworld, my name is Dominic, and may the Force be with you.
It's a wrap.